Welcome to the Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for being with us. As we head into the warmer months, which we presume are coming here in Northeast Ohio one day, anytime now, many people will be spending more time outdoors, whether it's at the pool, maybe on a hike, maybe just walking around the neighborhood. With that additional time in the sun comes a risk that often gets overlooked: skin cancer. It's the most commonly diagnosed cancer in the United States, and experts say many cases are preventable with simple, consistent habits. Still, there is a lot of confusion out there about sunscreen safety, how much protection we really need, and who's actually at risk. Today, we'll do our best to clear up some of those common misconceptions and learn practical tips to help protect your skin. With me by video call, we have Dr. David Crow, Department Chair of Dermatology at Metro Health. Dr. Crow, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
We do want to hear from you. Maybe you have questions about including sunscreen in your skin routine. Please let us know if you've got questions for Dr. Crow or a comment you want to share. You can join the conversation by emailing us at soi@ideastream.org or messaging us on Instagram. We're at the Sound of Ideas. Now, Dr. Crow, can we start by setting the table here with what are the most common types of skin cancer?
Sure, absolutely. So I could honestly talk for an hour about skin cancer, but I want to boil it down to three types that are important to know about, and those are basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, and melanoma. And basal cell carcinoma is extremely common, less of a risk overall to your general health, and generally will occur in older individuals. Squamous cell carcinoma is a bit less common, also generally occurs in older individuals, and is a slightly more of an increased risk to your health if you allow it to grow to a large size. Melanoma is the type of skin cancer that most people know about, and it comes from the common mole or dark spot on your skin. We call it a nevus, and it is quite dangerous if you allow it to grow big enough or long enough. And it's also the type that can occur in very young people. In fact, in young women, aside from breast cancer, it's one of the more common types of cancer that can occur.
So what's the difference between basal cell and squamous cell? Is there a difference in how that comes to be or how we can look for it?
Sure, basal cell carcinoma, when you're looking at it on your skin, often looks like a small bump that may have some little blood vessels inside of it. And it is often it can bleed frequently if traumatized. Squamous cell carcinoma is it looks like more of a thick, kind of crusted, rough-looking bump on the skin. They can both look pretty similar, and it sometimes can take a dermatologist to tell the difference between the two. But the important parts are that they are growing. They are often they can bleed, and they can have kind of sores in the middle of them. In particular, basal cell carcinoma can have a central sore.
Okay. So if someone is conducting a thorough skin examination, what would they want to look like? What can you tell us about the ABCDE rule?
Sure. ABCDE rule refers to melanoma. And generally, when you're looking at a dark spot in your skin, A refers to asymmetry, which refers to one side not looking like the other. B refers to border, when the border is irregular. C refers to color, if there are multiple different colors, importantly, shades of black and blue and other colors. D refers to diameter. A diameter greater than 6 millimeters, which is about the size of a pencil eraser, is generally not a good thing. And E refers to evolution over time. So generally, a mole that's changing over a period of months rather than very slowly over a period of years is more of a concern. So if you have two or more of those features in a given dark spot, it's generally good to get it checked out by a dermatologist or a physician of some kind.
Now, the B part of that rule, the border irregularity, does that mean if it's not just a round shape?
Right. That if it's not round, you can generally have some irregularity in border. And it doesn't have to be perfectly round or oval. But yes, if you're getting unusual border irregularity where the border is poorly defined or perhaps juts out on one side of of a lesion. This would kind of be similar to the asymmetry of the A in these criteria, but that's generally what you're going to look for.
Okay. We have a clip from an IdeaStream Public Media reporter, Abby Marshall, who recently experienced skin cancer. Let's hear that now.
Hi, my name is Abby Marshall. I'm a reporter and producer here at IdeaStream Public Media, and in 2022, I was diagnosed with stage 3 melanoma. I had been noticing that one of my moles, and I am quite fair-skinned, so I have moles, freckles, lots of things that can be difficult to track, and I had noticed that one of them had been changing. And so I went to a dermatologist and got it tested and found out that yes, in fact, it was melanoma. So I was referred to a whole suite of cancer doctors up at university hospitals in Cleveland, and I went through a whole treatment plan. So that included an excision surgery, which is how I have such a large, gnarly scar on my arm that did save my life, but quite big for just a tiny little speck. And they took out also some lymph nodes to test if the melanoma had spread to other parts of my body. And unfortunately, it had. And while none of my scans showed any lumps or masses or anything growing anywhere else, I did go through a year of immunotherapy treatments, which is basically an IV treatment that allows the body to recognize and attack the cancer cells. And in the years following, we've just been monitoring. I get ultrasounds to my lymph nodes, I get CT scans, all sorts of stuff to just make sure that the cancer is really gone. And so far, I have been in the clear, and I've got about a year until I'm at that magic 5-year mark. And I'm really looking forward to that, but it is just a testament that I was, 24 at the time. No tanning. I always wear sunscreen. I came from a family that really drilled that into my head, but sometimes it can just be, bad luck of the draw, bad genetic background with family history of melanoma. It could just be a really bad sunburn that just, mutated over the years. And unfortunately, it happens quite a bit. So it's really important to go to the dermatologist, get your skin looked at, keep track of any moles, freckles, anything like that.
Now, Dr. Crow, Abby mentioned a couple of things there that I want to ask you some follow-up questions on. One thing she mentioned was the 5-year mark, and that being an exciting point for someone who'd been diagnosed with skin cancer. Can you tell us about that?
Sure, that's generally thought to be the period of time when it's very unlikely that you will have a recurrence of the cancer. That being said, you can get recurrence of melanoma much later, but it's quite rare. So it is kind of a line in the sand where we say that the person is in a durable remission, and it is a nice place to be.
Okay. We have an email now in from Logan, which gets to another follow-up question about what Abby shared with us there. So Logan is asking us to back up a little bit and explain why skin cancer is dangerous to begin with. Logan says most folks think that skin cancer stays confined to the skin. Does it? And that's something Abby mentioned there, Dr. Crow, about it actually spreading beyond where it was initially found. So can you tell us about that?
Yes, as skin cancer progresses, it gains mutations in it. It changes in a way that allows it to spread to different areas of the body. In particular, melanoma has the tendency to do this, and it can sometimes happen earlier in the process, earlier in its growth phase, so that it can happen in very young individuals. Squamous cell carcinoma can also do this, although it takes longer in general for those mutations to accumulate and for this to happen. Basal cell carcinoma very rarely spreads. In fact, it's quite unusual for basal cell carcinoma it's just a less aggressive tumor overall, and those mutations just don't develop.
Another thing that Abby mentioned there was the fact that additional scans didn't show any lumps or masses. So if that's the case with someone who has skin cancer, how would a doctor know that it had spread if they weren't seeing those lumps or masses elsewhere?
So a lot of it is asking the patient. There's a scan called a PET scan, which is probably the most important test to find metastatic disease, as we call it, spread to other organs. And it is a test where it goes through the whole body and detects when there is something that we call hypermetabolic, or using a lot of nutrients. And when you see something that's hypermetabolic in the skin or in other organs, it can indicate that is that the cancer spread to a different area. Aside from that, after the scans are negative, it's all about doing a good skin examination to detect lymph nodes and other because skin cancer can spread to the skin. You can find metastasis in the skin, and also to ask questions about whether they're having any headaches or problems that may indicate that there's skin cancer in a different organ.
So is that something that goes along with the question of what is the danger of skin cancer, those symptoms that you can experience, and also just in general the spread to other areas of the body?
Yes, yeah, those are, in general, it can be hard to tell whether anything is spread early in the disease, but what you can notice is if you have enlarged lymph nodes, in particular enlarged lymph nodes, which are kind of the infection and kind of the drainage system of the body. If you have lumps in your armpit near where you have a dark spot, that could indicate that perhaps the melanoma has spread to that area. That's one of the areas that it spreads first. So that would be an early sign.
We have another clip now from a skin cancer survivor, Jen Book. Let's hear that, please.
I found that cancer also affected me, likely from the use of tanning beds. I tanned regularly in college and after college, not really paying much attention to the damage it was doing to my skin until I noticed a mole on my arm changing quickly and drastically. There's different kinds of skin cancer, and I was diagnosed with the worst kind, which is melanoma. I was diagnosed in August of 2017, and they diagnosed it through a biopsy, and then when it came back absolutely positive for melanoma, the doctor had to do a pretty serious surgery to get all of the cancer and also make sure that they didn't leave any. So the perimeter around my arm, the scar is much bigger than the actual mole was because the cancer wasn't just the size of that mole. I had, I believe, 30 stitches on the inside of my arm and 3 on the outside. But since my doctor performing the surgery was a dermatologist, she was able to make it so I had minimal scarring, thankfully. Tans are amazing. So get a spray tan if you want to have that pigment in your skin without having the risk of cancer.
Dr. Crow, we saw some images there, if you're watching us on the Ohio channel or the IdeaStream Public Media YouTube page, of the scar for Jen Book. We also saw the scar that Abby Marshall had, which is pretty large. Those are much larger than what you would expect a mole to be. Why did those incisions have to be so big? Why can that be necessary?
So we have based on the depth of the melanoma, which is kind of how deep it is from top to bottom, if you look at it sideways in a skin sample, we determine what the optimal excision diameter will be, what the margins are, and we've come to these numbers based on a lot of different studies related to recurrence of melanoma. And generally, the deeper the melanoma is, the larger the margin is needed to completely clear it and prevent it from coming back. That being said, we're looking at these margins all the time in studies to try to determine what we can do, because honestly, the size of the margins that we take for melanoma are smaller than we used to. We used to take very large margins for all melanomas, but we're constantly looking at it to see what the optimal removal size would be.
Now, in that clip there, Jen mentioned that she's pretty confident that her skin cancer came from tanning beds. We have an email now in from Tom talking about tanning and being out in the sun. So Tom writes, "My brother says he won't wear sunscreen because he claims that the chemicals which comprise the sunscreen are worse for your health than the benefit of blocking the sun's rays. And also, quote, sunlight is good for you. We've evolved to soak in those rays." And then Tom asks, what would you tell my brother and people who indulge in naturalist theories that are skeptical of sunscreen? What do you think about that,
Sure,
Dr. Crow?
That's certainly a controversial topic, and I certainly feel for people who struggle with this. And the important points are that there are chemical sunscreens and there are physical sunscreens. The chemical sunscreens are the ones that are under the most scrutiny, both in terms of safety and environmental impact. And you can tell whether something is a chemical sunscreen based on the names that are on the bottle. It usually titles like oxybenzone and avobenzone. And physical sunscreens are those that are comprised of zinc or titanium. And those are generally thought to be much safer from the standpoint of environment and also to the individual. So while the concept of the safety of chemical sunscreens is pretty complex, I would say that those who are on the fence about what they should use and the safety of them, they should use a physical sunscreen, which has ingredients like zinc or titanium, and you should also use non-nanoparticle sunscreens that are physical in nature. In terms of the question about the sun exposure being healthy, while it is true that you can boost your vitamin D production from sun exposure, which is the most commonly used reason for getting sun exposure, it's not a very efficient way to get vitamin D. In fact, we can get a lot more with a lot more regularity in our diets. So using the sun to obtain vitamin D not only increases your risk of skin cancer, but it also makes it so that you have more sun damage over time, and it really doesn't get you a whole lot of vitamin D.
Let's talk about SPF quickly. Can you tell us what SPF actually measures and what number we should be looking for on sunscreen labels?
Sure. So SPF is the sun protection factor, and it basically measures how much radiation it would take to cause a sunburn in skin that has the sunscreen on it versus skin that doesn't have the sunscreen on it. So it's basically a ratio, and what we're looking for to have people use is an SPF 30, and that blocks about 97% of the ultraviolet light that causes sunburn. That being said, we often recommend SPF 50 just because these SPF measures were made under perfect conditions, and nobody's perfect, and trying to reapply to the degree that is to create these numbers is often impractical. So getting an SPF 50 would give you a little bit of extra boost of protection if you're using a sunscreen imperfectly, which most people are.
And when we talk about the number of sunscreen there, the SPF value, is that the same 50 just all over the body, or is it different for the face and the rest of the body?
Preferably the entire body. The face is probably the most important area, and probably the area that people apply to the most. And you can certainly apply the same SPF on the entirety of the body.
What about SPF that is marketed as being in makeup for people that wear makeup? Is that sufficient for the SPF that you're putting on your face?
So it is for the period of time just after you use it. The important part to know about makeups that have sunscreen in them is that they're not meant to be applied multiple times a day. They're meant to be applied once, maybe twice, and you need to have a backup because sunscreen loses its efficacy over time. So you do need to have a traditional sunscreen in tow if you're going to spend a lot of time in the sun, because the combination products are only going to be used for their intended purposes.
And can we just look at the bottle and look at what's recommended for reapplication, or is there a general rule you can tell us?
So what we would like people to do is if they have a sunscreen that's appropriate, which is SPF 30, what we call broad spectrum, and also waterproof or water resistant, we generally have people reapply every 2 hours. And also after they go swimming or have really heavy sweating. Every 2 hours, it's difficult to keep to. And honestly, I feel like in addition to sunscreen, it's really important to invest in sun protective clothing because that's going to last quite a bit longer. It is going to be less expensive than buying sunscreen to the degree that you would need it. And there's a lot of very breathable and comfortable sun protective shirts that people can wear at the beach and with other activities.
What about for children? Are there particular rules that we should be keeping in mind when it comes to sun protection in children, and particularly thinking about, the importance of the type of sunscreen?
Sure. So babies that are less than 6 months of age, there is not currently an approved sunscreen to be used in that age group. that's not to say that using small amounts of sunscreen is dangerous. It just hasn't been studied in very young children. Uh, when babies are of that age, it's very important to wear sun protective clothing and keep them out of direct sunlight for long periods of time because they're going to be very sensitive to sunburn. Um, so after 6 months of age, it is best to use the physical sunscreens, the ones that I mentioned earlier, zinc, titanium, main ingredients, because they're thought to be safer and they're also less irritating. And they are usually quite broad spectrum. So physical sunscreens after 6 months of age.
When people are out in the sun, if they have a different skin tone, people with darker skin tone with more pigment in their skin, do they need less sunscreen or is it the same?
Also a controversial topic. I think that our sunscreen advice doesn't always take into account the fact that some people have some innate protection from the color of their skin. And that being said, it is still best to follow the guidelines, apply every 2 hours, use SPF 30. Often people with darker skin prefer a tinted sunscreen that usually has iron oxide in it, which blends in quite a bit better. It's quite a bit more elegant. That being said, the risk of skin cancer is lower. I would say that the application instructions are the same, but the goals are slightly different. There's going to be a reduced incidence of skin cancer, although the incidence is also already quite low. But in addition, there is the risk of sun damage and discoloration of the skin over time in people with darker skin. So that part is prevented with sunscreen use. So although the guidelines are the same, the goals are slightly different.
One more question here as we wrap up, Dr. Crow. Some people think that if you're out in the sun and you don't get a sunburn, if your skin tans, that you don't need sunscreen. Is there any truth to that?
No, I would say that the tan that you get makes it so that you have basically your skin has an SPF of 2. So there's maybe a slight increase in the blocking of ultraviolet radiation, but it's something that people take much too far, in my opinion, and they think that they're kind of immune to the sun's rays after that point, but they're still getting a lot of damage to their skin, and it gives people a false sense of security, and they often will still burn. You just won't be able to see it as well. So there's no such thing as a healthy tan, and you should still take the protection that I mentioned.
All right, Dr. Crow, thank you very much for your time, Department Chair of Dermatology at Metro Health. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
This is The Sound of Ideas. I'm Stephanie Haney. We'll be taking a break now, and when we come back, we'll talk to Northeast Ohio's Jobs Development Partner about growing the region's workforce. You're with The Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for staying with us. Northeast Ohio doesn't have enough people to fill available jobs. This is a problem that will continue to impact the region over the next 4 years. This is according to a recent economic forecast report from Team NEO, a nonprofit economic development organization. In the report, Economic Projections Through 2030, Team NEO found that the value of the goods and services coming out of Northeast Ohio are expected to increase on par with the state and national economies, but employment numbers will remain nearly flat. So what does this continued workforce gap mean for the region's economy and also competitiveness? We're going to talk about that today with our guests. Joining me in studio, we have Jacob Duritsky. He's the Vice President of Strategy, Research, and Talent at Team NEO. Jacob, welcome back to the show.
Good morning.
Also in studio with us, we have Michelle Rose. She's the Chief Executive Officer of Greater Cleveland Works. This is a nonprofit workforce development organization. Michelle, welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
If you want to be a part of this conversation, you can email us at soi@ideastream.org, or you can message us on Instagram. We're at The Sound of Ideas. Now, Jacob, before we get too far into the report, can you explain to us GDP, gross domestic product, and why that's an important economic indicator?
Yeah, absolutely. So GDP, a lot of people hear that nationally, right? You think about U.S. GDP, global GDP, what's going on in the economy. As we think about GDP here, it's the value add of goods and services in the community. Maybe said differently, what do people want that we produce from a goods and services perspective? So it's our manufacturing environment, it's our services that are in demand all over the world. The products that we make here are still very much in demand, which is a great thing and drives a lot of our economic health.
And so where does Cleveland land comparative to the rest of Ohio and the country as a whole in that space?
Yeah, so if you think about GDP, two ways to think about it. One is direct GDP. Our goods and services are highly in demand. When you look at growth projected out toward 2030 for us relative to the state and the country, strong growth, competitive growth, that's something that has been a hallmark of our economy for the last couple of decades. Productivity, GDP per worker, also incredibly strong. We're actually outpacing both the state and the country as a whole. So a lot to be encouraged by in terms of our industry mix and our product portfolio. The challenge becomes when you look at the job side of it. And jobs is a bigger structural issue that we have to start to deal with over time, because while GDP continues to grow and we're becoming a more productive economy, we still need people. And right now we're continuing to see small population declines. We're continuing to see an aging population, aging out of sectors of the economy like manufacturing that are incredibly important here. And we're at a point where we're not simply going to grow our way out of this. We have to start to think about the assets in our backyard and also how we attract and retain more workers here.
So this is something, this workforce issue, Jacob, it's something that Team Neo has flagged before, and that this is a call to action. How and why do we respond to this call to action?
Yeah, so why is because we're increasingly seeing a gap between what our employers need and people who are trained and prepared for those careers in the community. That is only projected in the next 5 to 10 years to grow. A sector like manufacturing alone is projected to have 60 to 100,000 job openings in manufacturing production occupations, because so much of that labor force is 55 and older. So we know what the problem is. We love putting out reports, but I think we're at a point in time where if you look out over the next 5 to 10 years, these structural issues, particularly around population, demographics, the labor force that we have, there aren't signs that they're just suddenly going to change and alter course. So how do we think, and I think this is why this conversation is so important, how do we think about the alignment between economic development and helping companies grow, workforce development, and the people we have in our community today? And how do we start to amplify sort of the opportunity that we have here to connect people to really, really good jobs and to do it in a much bigger, more impactful way?
Mm-hmm. Michelle, from someone working to connect people with jobs and employers, what does the job landscape look like for you right now?
Sure. So one thing that's been true in several iterations of the labor market over the past couple of years, as Jacob and his team have laid out, is that there still remain job openings in this market, and there still remain residents who need access to opportunity. So at Greater Cleveland Works, we really think about how we close that gap. And there are several interventions. It's going to take a lot of approaches. One of the ways we close the gap is recruiting more people to come to Cleveland and work at these great companies, but that can't be all of it. It's really also got to be a real look at our current labor market, our current potential workforce, including students in high school right now, and people who've been disconnected from the workforce for one reason or another. So one thing we see a lot at our job center at Ohio Means Jobs is that residents have some logistical and cost of living barriers that are holding them back from fully participating in either training for a career pathway or the labor market broadly. And so one of our interventions and one of our responses to that is how do we meet those barriers, remove them. And so the real question in front of them is, what is the right career pathway for me? What is going to pay me a family sustaining wage and be a quality work experience?
And when you're thinking about matching people with a job, is it something specific? Is it a skill that's specific that employers are looking for, or is it more soft skills right now?
It's all of them, and it really depends on the job, but it also depends a lot on the person and the job coach that they have. Job coaching is one of the most important jobs in our market, in our community, because it really is the combination of interests, skills, personality, desires. So I think that we are launching a new predictive matching platform called Arena for Greater Cleveland Works, which is a technological solution a little bit to what a job seeker might want to do with their career. And we know that that results in a better fit and ultimately better retention, which is good for employers and good for job seekers to have that economic stability. So it assesses a number of things, primarily skills and credentials, but also what someone likes to do at work, how they operate at work, And then that predictive matching algorithm is able to predict which of our local jobs they're going to be most successful in.
Okay. Now, Jacob, you were quoted in a previous conversation in Cleveland.com as saying this region is not Columbus in terms of growth. What did you mean by that?
I meant that Columbus has had opportunities, advantages that they've capitalized on in different ways than we have. And a lot of that has nothing to do with the value proposition for the market and everything to do with how they've grown and the point at which they've grown, right? They've thought about land use planning differently. They've thought about things like water rights differently, right? They've capitalized on the experience, I think, of other communities that have maybe struggled with some of these declines over the past few decades, and they've done things differently. That's great for Columbus, but I think we have to identify our own unique value proposition, and it starts in our backyard, frankly. And I think that's why when you think about the intersection of the work that we do trying to attract and grow companies here, the work that Michelle does and trying to train a labor market that is largely here, that's got to be a part of the strategy. How do we capture the people who are disconnected, who are here from the labor market, who know why Northeast Ohio is a great place to live, it's a great place to work, keep them here? The Cleveland Town Alliance, how do we retain more of those college graduates when they're here? Jobs Ohio has relocation incentives to lure people to the state of Ohio for around specific industry opportunities for specific jobs. We have to take advantage of all of that, but it starts with the core value proposition. And for all of those, like Michelle and I, who are really interested and engaged in this work, we think Northeast Ohio has what it takes. How do we now translate these insights into action and really speed it up so we don't fall further behind?
I'm interested in the finding in the report that the output, the services and the goods, that value is increasing while the workforce is remaining nearly flat. So what does that mean? Are we producing above our counterparts?
I think, particularly around manufacturing, we're absolutely producing above our counterparts. But what it means, practically speaking, is companies are finding ways to be more productive without people. It means they're investing in technology. Sometimes they're investing in automation. They're thinking about capital investment differently as ways to offset it. That said, we still have a host of small and medium-sized manufacturers and professional services firms who haven't even begun that journey of automation and technology adoption, who are still relying on people, who are still relying on an aging labor force, who are making incremental adjustments to their products by switching from, a pen and paper to record product tolerances to using Microsoft Excel. That's a big adjustment for a company, even in 2025. So how do we capitalize on that? But fundamentally within that, people want the types of goods we produce. People want the types of services that we have, legal, financial, insurance. They're in demand all over the world. Let's make sure people are in those jobs and we can keep that demand growing.
Michelle, you mentioned the fact that there are workers here or people who could be working that are not filling these positions that do exist here. So why is that happening? Are people finding themselves sidelined for lack of training, and is there training available for those people if that is the case?
Yeah, I think really the big answer here is in training. And our job as a system, using data like what Jacob and his team produce, has to be around adjusting the quality of providers and expecting a lot of our partners in community colleges and other training providers that get people credentials and certifications to do this work. Evolving the curriculum as we go, bringing new curriculum to market so that workers are prepared. And ultimately, all of this has to be done in partnership with employers. So it's hard sometimes when you're a small and medium-sized employer, you've got big changes ahead. You may not have a full HR department. You may not even have a single HR person. How are we helping employers think about what their workers need, getting their prospective workforce into training and then ultimately into those jobs? But yes, training is, I think, the biggest intervention we can take to get people off the sidelines and into these jobs. But that is expensive, it's time consuming, and it takes a lot of involvement from a broad swath of partners. But we are doing that work, and I really think that is the path forward here.
Is there something that you're seeing, Michelle, that is a specific job sector that's particularly in demand right now?
Yeah, I mean, we work with any employer, but of course our large healthcare institutions, as well as smaller healthcare providers, and increasingly care focused on seniors are always going to be in demand. Our hospitals are great partners. They hire a lot of people. They're large employers. And then we also see manufacturing needs, still small, medium, and large size. employers, and then tech is the cross-cutting skill and job type that we see in a number of sectors that are still in demand.
Jacob, you mentioned the increased use of automation. Is that something that we expect to just continue to increase here in Northeast Ohio, artificial intelligence use in general?
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot there. So yes, I think is a general answer as we continue to think about investments, but it's not just out of AI. The Internet of Things, the thinking about productivity enhancements like sensors. There are small incremental steps that can help you be more productive. Technology is going to be a big part of that. We're doing some work with the Great Cleveland Partnership right now, looking at incumbent skills of workers in professional services firms and how they continue to keep up. We're working with our higher education partners to make sure graduates are coming out of colleges and workforce programs with those skills embedded in what they're trying to do. So technology is going to continue to evolve. It's going to shape and shift our industries. But there's also upsides to that technology investment, right? Why can't we be the place that makes those supplies that go into the AI process, that go into the data centers, right? We're really, really good at making things here. It's not just about the AI itself. It's about the components and the intellectual property behind all of that we have an environment for and a supply chain for that could do it well here.
I'm not sure if either of you have caught this, but there is a video that's making the rounds on social media right now. There was a commencement speech at the University of Central Florida where the commencement speaker was talking about artificial intelligence and how it being kind of the next revolutionary thing just in the workforce. And that got a big boo from the crowd of graduates. And then the next statement was, this didn't exist so many decades ago. And that got a big cheer from the crowd of graduates. So my question regarding that, Michelle, is what are prospective workers thinking? What are you seeing here in Northeast Ohio about artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I didn't see the video, but I do think AI and the possibility of it as a revolution in the way we live and work is very present for everyone in any kind of job. It's present in our jobs and it's present in yours and really in any kind of the jobs that we have open in this community. I think workers want to know what's expected of them, how they can be successful in their job. I think they want to know how their employer is deploying AI and what impact that will have on them. My hope, and this is optimistic in some markets, but that AI is an augmentation and a tool that workers use and not a replacement for human beings. I think that's likely the scenario we're going to see in most employers, at least in the very near term. And so it really becomes a question of how are we preparing our workforce, including students in school now, to be successful at using AI and leveraging it in their daily lives and their work without teaching it to replace themselves. And I think really it's those basic AI skills and understanding of what it can do and what it's good at, and then also its limitations. A lot of these things we still need humans to do, and we want humans to do.
We have about a minute left, so I want to ask Michelle, because I know you're a boomerang. You left the Northeast Ohio area and you came back. So what brought you back?
Wanting to raise my children in Cleveland. I have 3 daughters. It's a beautiful place to live, especially as we approach the magical month of June when the weather is always good. My parents are here. I'm from here. And this is a better place, I think, to get to see the impact of your work. I'm a public servant. I served in the federal government. And my work now is public service too, but I get to see it and live it more every day. So those are all the reasons I moved back.
Okay. Well, we will continue to follow this, obviously, whether it's boomerangs or people coming here that haven't been here yet. What happens with the workforce? We appreciate it. Thank you for being our guests today. Jacob Duritzky, Vice President, Strategy, Research, and Talent at Team Neo. Thanks.
Thank you.
And Michelle Rose, CEO of Greater Cleveland Works. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for the show today. If you missed any part of the show, you can hear a rebroadcast tonight at 9 on 89.7 WKSU. You can also find every episode of The Sound of Ideas wherever you get your podcasts and on the IdeaStream Public Media YouTube page. To get the last word on today's topics, you can email us at soi@ideastream.org or message us on Instagram. We're at The Sound of Ideas. Yesterday, we talked about the Bike to Work movement in Northeast Ohio, and an event called Critical Mass came up. This is a large gathering of cyclists. It happens every month around the world. David B. in Cleveland Heights wrote in, "I so much appreciate bicyclists for both the environmental support, but also the more people who use cars less means lower prices for the rest of us. I also appreciate and have donated to the Ohio City Bicycle Co-op. Great people and community. However, in the past, when I've participated in critical mass rides, I was bothered by the long line of bikes blocking traffic at intersections, regardless of the traffic lights, and I saw the frustration and maybe anger of the car drivers. I hope this is done in a more reasonable way now. David B., thank you for sharing your experience and your thought. Tomorrow on The Sound of Ideas, we'll talk about the ever-changing legal landscape of marijuana, including the Trump administration's recent move to reclassify it. Then we'll learn about the upcoming Canton Greek Festival in a new installment of The Menu. That's our bi-weekly series in partnership with Cleveland Magazine. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for keeping the conversation going. I will see you back here tomorrow